Commander Thea Blackwood stood at the observation deck of Omega 9, her weathered hands resting on the titanium railing as she gazed out at the endless expanse of stars. At 91, her body might have been failing her, but her mind remained sharp as a plasma blade. The station's artificial gravity felt heavier these days, though she refused to acknowledge it, just as she refused the synthetic joint replacements that the medical bay kept offering. The distant nebula pulsed with shades of purple and blue, a cosmic reminder of the war that had shaped her life 5 decades ago. She could still hear the explosions, see the flash of particle beams cutting through the darkness of space. The great nebula war had claimed millions of lives. But somehow she had survived, carrying the weight of command decisions that haunted her dreams. The quiet hum of the station's life support systems was interrupted by an urgent alert from the docking bay. "Unscheduled arrival, Commander," announced the station's AI, its voice echoing through the empty observation deck. "Unknown vessel requesting emergency landing clearance." Thea straightened her back, ignoring the protest of her aging spine. "Display vessel specifications," she ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in battle. The holographic display materialized before her, showing readings that made her breath catch in her throat. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything she had seen since the war. "Bring up external cameras," she commanded. The view that appeared before her confirmed her suspicions. The vessel was of Arxian design, its crystalline hull shimmering with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around it. The Arxians had been humanity's allies during the war, but they had withdrawn from known space shortly after the victory, leaving behind only mysteries and unanswered questions. Grant them clearance, Thea decided, her heart racing with a familiar excitement she hadn't felt in years. "And notify Security Chief Rivera to meet me at Docking Bay 3. The walk to the docking bay took longer than it used to, but Thea refused to use the transport tubes. Her boots echoed against the metal floor as she made her way through the station's corridors, passing by crew members who regarded her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Few remained who remembered her as anything other than the stern old commander who kept watch over this forgotten outpost. Security Chief Isabella Rivera was waiting at the docking bay, her hand resting casually on her pulse pistol. At 35, she represented everything Thea had once been: sharp, capable, and perhaps too confident. "Commander," she nodded, "I've got a security team standing by." "Keep them out of sight," Thea ordered. "We don't want to appear hostile to our unexpected guests." The airlock cycled, and both women tensed as the inner doors began to open. Through the mist of equalizing atmosphere stepped a figure that caused even the unflappable Rivera to gasp. The alien stood over 7 feet tall, its body covered in what appeared to be living crystal. Patterns of light flowed beneath its transparent skin, forming complex geometries that seemed to respond to its movements. "I am Krax," the being announced, its voice resonating directly in their minds. "Last emissary of the Arxian Collective. And I come bearing a warning that concerns the fate of both our species." Thea felt a chill run down her spine. The Arxians had been known for many things, but hyperbole was not one of them. If Krax had broken their self-imposed exile to deliver a warning, the situation had to be dire indeed. "Welcome to Omega 9, Thea responded, falling back on decades of diplomatic experience. "I am Commander Thea Blackwood. Though I admit, I never expected to see an Arxian again in my lifetime." Krax's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. "The universe, Commander Blackwood, has a way of defying our expectations, particularly when survival is at stake." Rivera's hand tightened on her weapon, but Thea raised a hand to stay any action. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office," she suggested, noting the way Krax's inner lights had begun to pulse more rapidly. "Whatever brings you here, I suspect it's not something for open discussion." As they made their way through the station, Thea couldn't shake the feeling that history was about to repeat itself. The last time an Arxian had appeared unexpectedly at a human facility, It had been to warn of the impending conflict that would become the Great Nebula War. She had been young then, full of fire and certainty. Now she was simply tired, but duty had never cared about fatigue. The door to her office slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space that was more museum than workplace. The walls were lined with relics from the war, fragments of ships, old weapons, and holographic maps of battles long past. Crax paused at the threshold, its crystalline form reflecting the soft lighting in a cascade of colors. "You keep memories of death close," the alien observed, its mental voice carrying a note of what might have been approval. "I keep memories of sacrifice close," Thea corrected, lowering herself into her chair with as much dignity as her aging body would allow. "Now tell me what was worth breaking 50 years of silence." Carax's inner lights darkened to a deep purple. The weapon that ended the war, it began, was not destroyed as your records claim. Thea felt her blood run cold. The Nexus device had been the most terrible weapon ever created, capable of unmaking reality itself. Its destruction had been the final act of the war, or so everyone had been told. "Continue," she commanded, even as her mind raced with the implications. The fate of humanity might once again rest in her hands, and this time, she wasn't sure she had the strength to bear it. The silence in Commander Blackwood's office grew heavy as Carax's words hung in the air. Security Chief Rivera shifted uncomfortably, her hand never straying far from her weapon. The Nexus device, a name that hadn't been spoken aloud in decades, yet its mere mention made Thea's old battle scars ache with phantom pain. "Impossible," Thea finally said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I was there. I saw the device tear itself apart when we overloaded its core. Half the Centauri sector still bears the scars of that explosion." Carax's crystalline form pulsed with deep red light. "What you saw, Commander, was one of many contingencies planned by those who created the device. They knew it might be discovered, knew it might be used against their will. What was destroyed that day was merely a shell, a decoy." Thea's mind raced back to that final battle. The screams over the comm channels, the blinding light that had consumed everything, the weeks of radiation sickness that had followed. She had lost too many friends that day to accept that it had all been for nothing. "If what you're saying is true," Rivera interjected, "then where has the real device been all this time?" Carax turned its crystalline head toward the security chief, patterns of light swirling beneath its transparent skin. "Closer than anyone could have imagined. It lies dormant within the very heart of this station." Thea felt her aged heart skip a beat. Omega 9 was built after the war. She protested, but even as she spoke, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed began falling into place. The strange energy readings that occasionally plagued the lower levels, the mysterious malfunctions that seemed to follow no logical pattern, the inexplicable feeling that had drawn her to accept this command post when she should have retired years ago. "This station," Carax explained, "was constructed around an artifact that your builders never fully understood. They assumed it was a remnant of an ancient civilization, a harmless relic to be studied. They were partially correct. It is ancient, but it is far from harmless." Rivera's professional composure cracked slightly. "Why tell us this now, after 50 years of silence?" The alien's inner lights dimmed to an ominous purple. "Because others have discovered the truth. The Syndicate has learned of the device's location, and they have already set their plans in motion. Even now, their agents are infiltrating key positions throughout human space." Thea pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the protest of her aging joints. "The Syndicate died with the war," she stated, but her voice carried a note of uncertainty. "The Syndicate," Carax responded, "merely went underground. They have spent decades gathering power, waiting for the right moment to strike. They seek to finish what they started during the war, the complete subjugation of all sentient species under their rule." A warning klaxon suddenly blared through the station speakers, causing all three of them to tense. "Security breach in Level 7," the station's AI announced. Unknown entities detected in the maintenance tunnels. Rivera was already moving toward the door, her pulse pistol drawn. "They're here," she announced grimly. "No," Crax corrected, its crystalline form glowing with increasing intensity. "That is merely a diversion. The real threat." The alien's warning was cut off by a massive explosion that rocked the entire station. Emergency lights flashed as artificial gravity fluctuated, sending loose objects floating momentarily before crashing back down. Multiple hull breaches detected, the AI reported, its usual calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. Unknown vessels approaching from Vector 793. Thea's military training kicked in, decades of muscle memory overriding the limitations of her aged body. "Rivera, get to the security center. Coordinate our defense and evacuate all non-essential personnel to the emergency shelters." "And you?" Rivera asked, though she already knew the answer. "I'm going to the lower levels," Thea replied, retrieving an old service pistol from her desk drawer. "If what Karak says is true, we can't let them reach the device." "You cannot go alone," Karak stated, moving to block her path. "The knowledge I carry is essential to preventing catastrophe." Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Through the office viewport, Thea could see the sleek shapes of attack ships emerging from the nebulous purple haze. Their design was unfamiliar, but their intent was clear. "Then keep up," she commanded, checking her weapons charge. "Rivera, delay them as long as you can. But if you hear the code phrase, Twilight Protocol, you get everyone off this station immediately." "Understood." Rivera's face showed she wanted to argue, but years of military discipline won out. "Understood, Commander. Good hunting." With that, she disappeared through the door, already barking orders into her comm unit. Thea turned to Carax, her eyes hard with determination. "I'm too old for this nonsense," she muttered, "but I'll be damned if I let them start another war. Show me where this device of yours is hidden." The alien's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been approval. "Follow me, Commander. But be warned, what you are about to see will challenge everything you believe about the war, about your victory, and about the true nature of reality itself." As they made their way through the increasingly chaotic corridors of Omega 9, Thea couldn't shake the feeling that history wasn't just repeating itself. It was coming full circle, bringing her back to a moment of choice she had faced 50 years ago. Only this time, she had the wisdom of age to guide her decisions, for better or worse. The fate of humanity once again hung in the balance, and Thea Blackwood, the forgotten warrior of Bar Galactico, was about to face her final battle. The descent into Omega 9's lower levels felt like a journey into the station's forgotten memories. Emergency lights cast crimson shadows across corroded walls as Thea and Carax made their way through maintenance tunnels that hadn't seen human footsteps in years. Each explosion above sent tremors through the metal framework, accompanied by the distant sound of weapons fire. "Rivera to Commander," her comm unit crackled. "We've got multiple breaches on levels 3 through 5. They're not just attacking, they're looking for something." "Status of the evacuation?" Thea asked, pausing to catch her breath. Her lungs burned with each step, but she pushed through the pain. 60% of non-essential personnel are in the shelters. "But Commander, these aren't normal raiders. They're using tech I've never seen before. It's like they can walk through walls." Carax's crystalline form dimmed momentarily. "Phase shift technology. The Syndicate has advanced further than we feared." Thea switched off her comm, turning to face the alien. "No more half-truths, Carax. What aren't you telling me about this device? Why is it worth all this bloodshed?" The alien's inner lights pulsed with complex patterns before responding. "The Nexus device was never meant to be a weapon, Commander. It was designed as a gateway, a means to access and manipulate the fundamental forces that bind reality together." "A gateway to where?" Thea demanded. "To everywhere. To every possible version of reality. The device doesn't just bend space and time. It can rewrite the very laws of existence. In the wrong hands, It could be used to reshape the universe according to one's will. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling as emergency bulkheads slammed shut behind them. "And in the right hands?" Thea asked, though she already suspected the answer. "There are no right hands, Commander." "That is what my people realized too late. The device's power is too great, too tempting. It corrupts even the purest intentions." They reached a sealed doorway at the end of a corridor Thea had never seen before, despite her years on the station. Ancient symbols covered its surface, pulsing with a faint blue light that seemed to respond to Carax's presence. "This is why we withdrew after the war," Carax continued, placing its crystalline hand against the door. "Not out of fear or indifference, but because we knew humanity would eventually discover the truth. We hoped you would make a different choice than we did." The door slid open with a sound like sighing, revealing a vast chamber that defied the station's known dimensions. At its center floated a geometric structure of impossible angles and shifting surfaces, neither solid nor liquid nor energy, but somehow all three at once. "By all the stars," Thea whispered, her aged eyes struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. "It's beautiful." "Commander," Rivera's voice burst through the comm. "We've got a problem. Someone's accessing the station's main computer from inside. They're shutting down our defenses." Before Thea could respond, a new voice echoed through the chamber, one that sent chills down her spine. "Hello, old friend." From the shadows emerged a figure Thea had never expected to see again. Admiral Marcus Durand, her former commanding officer, the man she had watched die in the final battle of the war. He looked exactly as he had 50 years ago, without a day of aging. "Impossible," Thea breathed, her weapon raised instinctively. "Nothing is impossible with the right tools, Thea." Marcus smiled, but it wasn't the smile she remembered. This one held no warmth, no humanity. "Did you really think I died that day? The device showed me a better way. A way to transcend all human limitations." Carax moved protectively in front of Thea, its crystalline form blazing with light. "You are an abomination. The device was never meant to preserve life indefinitely. The device was meant for those with the vision to use it." Marcus snapped, his form flickering like a hologram. "Humanity has squandered its potential for too long, playing at peace when we could be gods." More figures emerged from the shadows, soldiers in advanced armor, their movements unnaturally smooth. But what shocked Thea most was that she recognized some of their faces. Officers and crew who had supposedly died in various accidents over the years, all unchanged by time. "Join us, Thea," Marcus offered, extending his hand. "You've served long enough. Let the device free you from the prison of mortality. Help us guide humanity to its true destiny." Thea's finger tightened on her trigger, but her tactical mind was already assessing the situation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in a chamber with technology she barely understood. Yet something about Marcus's words rang hollow, a fundamental wrongness that went beyond his apparent immortality. "I've lived 91 years, she replied, her voice steady. "Watched friends die, made peace with my mistakes, learned from every scar and wrinkle. That's not a prison, Marcus. That's what makes us human." The false admiral's face twisted with rage. "Then die as a human," he snarled, raising his hand. Energy crackled around his fingers as reality itself seemed to bend toward his will. Carax's voice resonated in Thea's mind. "The device responds to thought and intention. If enough of them focused their corrupted will through it." Thea didn't need him to finish. She could feel it, reality starting to unravel around them as Marcus and his followers reached out to the floating geometric structure. The chamber filled with impossible colors as the very air began to crystallize. The final battle for the Nexus device had begun, and with it, the battle for the very nature of humanity itself. Reality buckled and warped around them as Marcus's immortal soldiers advanced. The chamber's walls rippled like liquid metal, reflecting impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. Thea's combat instincts screamed at her to fight, but her weapons seemed pathetically inadequate against beings who had transcended mortality. "Rivera," she barked into her comm, "initiate Twilight Protocol. Get everyone off this station now." "But, Commander, that's an order." Thea's voice carried the weight of decades of command. Through the static, she heard Rivera reluctantly acknowledge. Crax's crystalline form pulsed with increasing intensity, creating a barrier of pure energy between them and Marcus's forces. "The device is becoming unstable," the alien warned. "Their corrupted existence is causing cascade failures in the local quantum field." Marcus laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. "You still don't understand, do you? Instability is exactly what we want. When reality breaks down completely, we can reshape it according to our will. No more death, no more limitations, just pure, unlimited potential." "You've lost your mind," Thea said, watching as her old friend's form flickered between states of matter. "This isn't transcendence, Marcus. It's perversion." The chamber shuddered as more of Marcus's soldiers emerged from twisted passages in spacetime. Each of them moved with inhuman precision, their bodies switching between solid and ethereal states at will. Thea recognized more faces, good officers who had served under her, now twisted into something monstrous. "The evacuation has begun," Crax communicated directly to Thea's mind. "But we cannot let them gain full control of the device. The consequences would extend far beyond this station." Thea's tactical mind raced through options, even as her body reminded her of its age-imposed limitations. "The device responds to intention," you've said. "What if we could overload it? Force a controlled collapse." "It would require a tremendous force of will," Crax replied, "and the probability of survival." "I didn't ask about survival," Thea cut him off. "I asked if it was possible." Before Crax could respond, Marcus made his move. Reality twisted around him as he stepped through space, appearing directly before them. His hand closed around Thea's throat, lifting her off the ground with impossible strength. "Look at you," he sneered, "still clinging to your mortality like it's something precious. I offered you godhood, Thea. Instead, you choose to die as a weak, aging human." Despite the crushing pressure on her throat, Thea smiled. "You forgot the first lesson of command," she gasped out. "Never underestimate human weakness." With every ounce of strength left in her aging body, Thea drove her knee up into Marcus's midsection. It shouldn't have affected him. His quasi-physical form should have been impervious to such attacks. But in his arrogance, in his certainty of his own transcendence, he had momentarily solidified to demonstrate his power over her. The blow connected. Marcus's grip loosened just enough for Thea to break free. She rolled away, coming up next to the geometric structure of the Nexus device. Its surfaces rippled at her proximity, responding to her presence in a way she hadn't expected. "Crax," she shouted. "The resonance pattern. It's not just about power or will. It's about connection." The alien's crystalline form blazed with sudden understanding. "Of course, the device doesn't respond to force of will alone. It responds to the connections between all things, the very fabric of reality that binds existence together." Marcus recovered quickly, his form blazing with furious energy. "Kill them both," he commanded his soldiers. "The device is nearly ready." The chamber erupted into chaos as reality itself became a weapon. Marcus's soldiers phased through solid matter, their weapons firing bolts of pure possibility that left holes in existence itself. Crax met their assault with waves of crystalline energy, while Thea reached out and placed her hand on the surface of the Nexus device. The contact was electric, sending shockwaves through her consciousness. In that moment, she could feel everything. Every life on the station, every choice that had led to this moment, every possible future branching out before them. She felt Marcus's corrupted connection to the device, the way he and his followers had twisted its purpose to serve their desperate fear of death. But more than that, she felt something else, something that Marcus, in his quest for immortality, had forgotten entirely. Rivera to Commander. Her comm crackled one final time. Evacuation complete. But we're detecting critical power fluctuations throughout the station. Whatever you're planning. Thank you, Isabella. Thea replied softly. It's been an honor. The chamber's reality began to fracture as Marcus and his soldiers pushed harder, trying to seize control of the device. Cracks appeared in the air itself, showing glimpses of other dimensions, other possibilities. The station groaned under the strain of containing forces it was never meant to handle. But Thea stood firm, her hand still pressed against the device's surface. Her eyes met Marcus's, and for a moment she saw a flicker of the man he had once been. The commander who had taught her about sacrifice, about duty, about the true meaning of leadership. You asked me to join you in transcending death, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the chaos. But I already know something far more powerful than immortality. The device pulsed beneath her touch, responding not to her will or her strength, but to something far more fundamental, something that even Marcus's twisted immortality couldn't match. The final confrontation was about to begin, and its outcome would determine not just the fate of Omega 9, but the very nature of humanity's future. Time seemed to slow in the chamber as reality continued to fracture around them. Through her connection to the Nexus device, Thea could feel the very fabric of existence straining under the pressure of Marcus's assault. His immortal soldiers pressed forward, their forms shifting between states of matter as they tried to reach the device. You cannot hope to resist us, Marcus snarled, his form blazing with corrupted energy. We are beyond death, beyond limitation. We are the future. But Thea held firm, her aged hand steady against the device's surface. Through their connection, she could feel something Marcus couldn't, the deep, resonant pulse of life itself, not just on the station, but reaching out across space and time. Cracks, she called out, never taking her eyes off Marcus. Your people didn't withdraw after the war because they were afraid, did they? They withdrew because they understood something about the device. The alien's crystalline form pulsed with confirmation. We understood that true power lies not in the ability to transcend death, but in the connections that make life meaningful. Understanding flooded through Thea as the device's true nature became clear. It wasn't a weapon or a tool for transcendence. It was a mirror reflecting back the deepest truths of those who sought to use it. Look at yourself, Marcus, she said softly. Look at what you've become. You wanted to defeat death so badly that you forgot how to live. Spare me your philosophy, Marcus spat, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his immortal eyes. What do you know of power? Thea smiled, and in that smile was every moment she had lived, every battle she had fought, every loss she had mourned, and every joy she had celebrated. I know that real power isn't about avoiding death. It's about what we create while we're alive. It's about the lives we touch, the legacy we leave behind. The device pulsed beneath her touch, responding to the truth in her words. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath as the chamber filled with a light that was both blinding and somehow gentle. Commander, Carax's voice resonated in her mind. The device is aligning with your consciousness. But to reverse what they've done, to heal the damage to reality itself. I know the cost, Thea replied calmly. Then aloud to Marcus. You taught me once that a commander's greatest duty is to protect those under their command. Did immortality make you forget that too? For the first time, doubt crept across Marcus's ageless face. You can't possibly understand what we've achieved. We've conquered death itself. No, Thea said firmly. You've become its slaves. But it's not too late to remember what it means to be human. She closed her eyes, feeling the connections that bound all living things together. The crew who had served under her, the station that had been her home, the very essence of humanity that Marcus and his followers had tried to transcend. Through the device, she could feel every possibility, every potential future. And she chose. The chamber erupted with pure white light as Thea poured everything she was into the device. Not her will or her strength, but her understanding of what it truly meant to live, to age, to face death with dignity. The light spread outward, touching each of Marcus's soldiers in turn. They began to change, their immortal forms becoming solid once more as 50 years of suspended time caught up with them. Some aged to dust in moments, their long-delayed deaths finally claiming them. Others, whose transformations had been more recent, simply became human again, falling to their knees as mortality returned. Marcus screamed, a sound of both rage and revelation, as the light reached him last. "What have you done?" he demanded, watching his hands become wrinkled in age. "I gave you back your humanity," Thea answered, her own form beginning to fade as the device drew more deeply from her. "I gave you back the right to live, and yes, to die, as you were meant to." Crax moved to her side, its crystalline form providing support as her strength wavered. "The damage to reality is healing," it reported. "But the cost is worth it," Thea finished. She could feel herself becoming part of something larger, her consciousness expanding even as her physical form began to fade. Through the device, she could see everything: past, present, and the infinite possibilities of the future. "Rivera," she spoke into her calm one final time, her voice strong despite her fading form. Tell them that humanity's greatest strength was never in conquering death. It was in how we chose to live." The light grew brighter, and in its radiance, the chamber began to heal. Reality stabilized as the device pulsed one final time, accepting Thea's sacrifice not as an end, but as a transformation. Her physical form dissolved completely, but her consciousness, her understanding, her very essence became part of the fabric of space-time itself. In the years that followed, stories would be told about Omega 9 and the commander who saved not just the station, but the very nature of humanity itself. Some said that on quiet nights, in the observation deck where she used to stand, you could still feel her presence, not as a ghost, but as a reminder that true immortality lies not in endless life, but in the legacy we leave behind. And in the vast expanse of space, where the nebulous purple light still pulsed like a cosmic heartbeat, Thea Blackwood's final lesson lived on. That humanity's greatest power was never in transcending our mortality, but in embracing it, in living fully despite it, and in passing on our understanding to those who would follow. The Nexus device, under Carax's guidance, was sealed away in a dimension between dimensions, waiting for the day when humanity would be truly ready to understand its purpose. Not as a weapon or a tool for transcendence, but as a mirror reflecting the deepest truth of existence, that life's meaning lies not in its duration, but in its connections, its choices, and its capacity for growth. And somewhere, in the endless dance of stars and possibilities, the consciousness that had once been Commander Thea Blackwood washed over it all, at peace with her final choice and the legacy she had left behind.